So I just hit record. It's such a threshold moment. There's that liminal space between I want to do this. I want to um, share some thoughts on education, but it's comfy where I am. Um, so there's some significance to actually hitting that little record button on the Zoom solo call. Um, I don't know what I'm gonna call this podcast, video cast. Um, my working title is Stories of Learning and Forgetting, which is a nod to one of my favorite books by Frank Smith, The Book of Learning and Forgetting. Um, and I also came up with the idea of just kind of going through the alphabet to find a theme and actually going in order. So today's show, boys and girls, and men and women, is brought to you by the letter A for administration. Ooh. Um, I'm curious how other teachers feel about the admins in their life. So I'm gonna share two stories of woe and maybe two stories of forgetting and two brief stories of learning. Oh, this video is great, right? Like being backlit like that. And before I start, I like the idea of kind of presencing the time and place. It's June 10th, um, 6:45 a.m. at the Musulak Ravine Lodge in near Dartmouth in New Hampshire. And what's happening in the world? Yesterday, I heard a couple of things. The Keystone Pipeline, that much fighting happened over, was finally abandoned yesterday. And also, there was an article about how scientists are now considering the possibility of COVID been having escaped from the Wuhan virus lab. Um, and like the idea of kind of centering whatever theoretical, philosophical conversations I might be having into a world that's actually hopefully not just hurting, but certainly there's a reality to it. Okay, so A for administration. Um, there's this blog I wrote when I was a when I was teaching at a Burton High School in San Francisco public school district. And by far the worst part about working there was the administration. The HR was a mess. Teachers union totally protected the wrong people. Um, and this is an encounter with a vice principal for discipline. Okay, so this is from a blog from Saturday, November 2nd, 2002. The student I wrote about earlier, Andrea, almost got me in trouble last week. There's a little pause. One of the reasons why I don't think 22-year-olds should be teachers, I guess I was 25 by then, is the self-centeredness that will probably be obvious. It is obvious to me now as I read through, like, it's all about you, isn't it? Anyway, the student I wrote about earlier, Andrea, almost got me in trouble last week. At the beginning of every third period, announcements are read over the loudspeakers, meaning the not so loud speakerphone. It's been hard to get every student to be quiet since most of the announcements are pointless, and since I don't really want to be a do this or else kind of teacher. Well, Andrea wanted to hear the announcements, and she got mad at Carlos for talking. Uh, Carlos is one of my favorite students. I'm sure I'll tell some stories about him later. Carlos threw some gas on the fire, and soon enough, she started a profanity laced tirade. While she has never done anything quite like it, Andrea is certainly a bit volatile, and just the day before, she spent half the period away from the group with her head on the desk. I didn't want to force her to work on math, so I let her be. Anyway, by the time I walked over to her group to quiet her down, our new vice principal in charge of discipline, who happened to be walking by my room, was standing in the open door. I want a referral on my desk today with exactly what she said. This is not allowed here. Embarrassed as hell, I started telling him about my attempts, mostly successful, to have Andrea be a part of the group and actually learn something. I told him I had established a good relationship with her and I don't want to ruin it. Eventually, he gave up his request for a referral, but not before chewing Andrea out for a few minutes outside. I don't think she was all that impressed. To make sure I have a good relationship with the VP, I remembered to thank him for letting me deal with my student my own way the next time I saw him. He was all smiles, very far from the self righteous, domineering figure that had been standing in my doorway not that long ago. The thing is, we either need more people like him so we can run the school like a tight ship, or else an entirely different set of people who are worried less about curriculums and mandatory education and more about providing kids. Since the latter scenario is still a dream, except in some places, I guess my school might be a better place because of people like him and our new dean. One last funny anecdote about the same VP is that he lectured my colleague Brad, who's a 22-year-old with Teach for America, on allowing two students to go to the restroom at the same time. You've got to think like they do. One kid to the bathroom is okay. Two is trouble. Um, and the other anecdote happened, something I witnessed a couple of weeks ago. I was observing a Montessori class, ages 3 to 6, and I was only there for um, a little under 2 hours. And they had, I'd never been to a Montessori classroom, and it's cool. There's like all these toys. There's always the choice for kids to do what they want. Um, and my friend, who's new to teaching, was running the class, and they had this tray of little tiny water bottles that they offered me. I had my own water, but like I saw at least 3 kids pick up a water that morning, and one of the 2 women who were working in the office came into this classroom for some reason, and she saw the tray and she went to grab it. I forget if my friend um, protested that. She might have very lightly, but I distinctly remember that one 5-year-old girl clearly asked the admin woman not to take the waters away. And I don't know, she said nothing. She might have had this like dismissive look on her face. Certainly, as I'm as I'm going back in my memory, it's because I was fucking pissed. Um, it's probably gotten worse and worse. She might have been like a fire breathing dragon of like sneering condescension, but there's something towards that condescension, and like certainly she did not say a word to this little girl who had bravely made a request, right? So she just walks out with a whole tray of waters. Um, and I had to leave anyway because the school wouldn't welcome my puppy even in the courtyard on the inside. Um, which had been our plan to let the kids actually play with the puppy. So they ended up just playing with him through the through the bars of the jail that they're in, appropriately. Um, so yes, A is for administration, and I want to contrast it with a couple of vignettes from this book. Sudbury Valleys are basically free schools, modeled on Summer Hill. Um, Democracy, 5-year-old kids and adults all have one vote at the school meeting. This is from Hannah Greenberg, who I believe is the wife of Danny Greenberg, who and they're the founders, I think. People often ask me why I love to spend my time at the Sudbury Valley School. The following are 3 vignettes that are good examples of the kind of relationships that the adults and children develop over the years. 1. This happened a long time ago, but is still fresh in my memory. The person in question, age 10 or so, was punished for some mischief he caused after hours. Um, and punished, just for those of you who are not familiar with Sudbury schools, um, I don't know why I feel the need to soften this, but there is a justice committee, the JC, which is made up of 3 kids, one from each age group and one adult. And it's that committee that determines what happens when somebody's brought up to the JC for some rules violation. So these are free schools, but they're not anarchy schools, right? Like, um, so he was not allowed to stay in the building after 5 p.m. and so was obliged to wait for his ride outside. On the day of the incident, I was closing school and doing the trash. At 5 p.m., he asked me for special dispensation to stay indoors because it was raining. Being both pragmatic and soft hearted, I said, I will let you stay if you help with the trash. He replied, I would help you with the trash, but I don't believe in bribery, so I will wait outside. 2. I was talking to 3 little kids about 5 years old. One said, Oh, Hannah, you're so nice. You're my favorite staff member. Then another said, Not mine. I love Joan the best. After the first shock, I felt very flattered that the child felt comfortable enough to tell me the truth. So I ventured to ask her, I thought you liked Marge a lot. She answered, Oh, yes, I like Marge better than you too, but Joan is my favorite. And what the hell? I'll read the third one, even though it's perhaps less relevant. But all these vignettes are just such a beautiful contrast to the two. I'm still going to use. I like using the term prison factory schooling examples, even Montessori, which is still along the same lines. Um, so 3, one teenager asked me to teach an algebra class. I replied that I had never taught algebra before and was not sure if I could teach it well. She said to me, I think that you should do it with us. This way you will learn, and next time you will know how to do it. Won't that make you feel good? Of course, I am teaching algebra, and we all enjoy it very much. I like to spend my days with people who are honest and vital, whose hearts are filled with love and optimism. Um, and my last thought on admins is something I got from John Taylor Gatto, um, and he kind of went through the process of how one room schoolhouses, which is the way Oro's one room, one world schoolhouses, this the one room schoolhouse concept is really important to me because it doesn't separate kids by age, it doesn't separate kids from adults, um, and it has this sense of we're on the team. That's a relatively small team. Like how many people can you actually fit in one room, right? um, but what John Taylor Gatto was talking about is like imagine there's 4 school buildings near the in 4 different villages in, let's say, Vermont. I think he might actually use Vermont for his example. Well, great. You don't have to drive very far to get to work. You can probably walk there. Um, all the money goes basically to the teachers. But what happens, and he says, and, he has a book called The Underground History of American Education. I haven't had a chance to check primary sources, but I think it's been confirmed from other places that he's pretty much right on, though perhaps a little bombastic in how he presents the information, for extra effect. But basically, what he says is that what happens to those 4 room schoolhouses, which is basically like 100% teachers and no admins, right? Or the admin is also a teacher, half a teacher. I don't know exactly how they run. Um, is they all get merged into a unified school district. My when I first came to America in 8th grade, I went to the East Side Union high school district. It's like, what's up with all this union stuff? Well, apparently it's like taking a lot of smaller schools and putting them together in the district, which then you have to have, um, what do they call district superintendent, or like, yeah, like whatever, like the big boss, and who makes a 6-figure salary, and the assistant big boss who makes 6-figure salaries. And I have friends who are who are assistant big bosses and such, but um and they build one giant school building, which where you can have these schools with thousands of kids where none of them get individual attention. And all of a sudden, instead of 100% of the resources going into teaching, what, like 30 something percent go, because salaries of the admins are so much higher. Um, and then the question is, what do those administrators do? And I know reinvent. Well, I have multiple friends and mentors who have actually gone from being teachers to being admins, and sure, there's real concerns. I mean, sure, there's laws about accessibility, which are actually John Telegata says were used to destroy those one room schoolhouses and build the giant accessible um, school building. So it's probably not as simple as my belligerent revolutionary self wants to make it, right? There's probably something to be said on the other side, and I'd love to learn about the other side. But from the perspective of a classroom teacher, or as I empathize with a student, man, those admins are getting in the fucking way. Um, and those are some tales, stories of learning and forgetting. Thank you for watching. Please, if you watch, this is there's kind of a vulnerability in putting my thoughts out there. Part of me is like, nobody wants to fucking know about education. They're just, was it? Somebody said that our current education system is doing like a passable job for enough stakeholders. Parents get some childcare, or consumerist society gets enough people who contribute to the consumerism. Kids are not totally destroyed, so um, and they learn some skills. Maybe they learn how to read, even though they would probably learn on their own. Anyway, our current school systems do just enough for enough stakeholders that they're not at fault, right? That there's not about to be a revolution any moment now. Anyway, um, thanks for thanks for watching. In and even though something inside me says like, no, nobody wants to hear about how shitty the school system is and what we could do better. There are things we can do better, right? Which is why I'm dreaming of this Oros project where one room, one world schoolhouses. Um, but even personally, because I'm just going to share this on Facebook or with my friends. So if you have any kind of if feedback is great, like tell me, tell me, tell me about my blind spots, please. Tell me if I have food in my teeth. Um, but also words of encouragement, because that's important. That may be the difference between recording the next one and not. So thank you. Oh, last thought. The As I was in meditative prayer this morning, the phrase came to me: free schools, happy, powerful children. So I think that's what it's about, and it's um, I think in the first two stories, there is a learned powerlessness in children um, that I just see. Like by the time there are seniors, the light in their eyes is fucking gone, and they may be going to Berkeley, and it doesn't matter. They're dead on the inside. Carlos, the student I said I really liked, there's this black kid who he was a senior, and I'm pretty sure he ended up not taking the high stakes test. So he was screwed as far as going to college, getting his diploma, etc. But he was so smart, so brilliant, and he's one of the people who kind of gets left behind, ironically. Um, okay, I keep trying to end, but apparently I still want to talk. We'll save some of that for tomorrow when I'm gonna have to find a different topic that starts with B. Um, Thanks for watching. Feedback, please.